This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Hello, Dr. Daniel Knowles here, coming to you from 5,280 feet. For wherever you are watching or listening to the Mile High podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. You never want to miss any Mile High tick. So hit subscribe whether you're on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. We look forward to you learning more to be an incredible chiropractor. And also want to encourage you to be on higher ground. It's September 25th weekend. RiseUpToMileHigh.com is where you can get the details. And today on this podcast, I am so thrilled that you get to connect with Dr. Theodossis, Dr. Theo, Christine Theodossis from Sherman College. She is an incredible chiropractor. She's the Associate Professor of Clinical Sciences at Sherman College of Chiropractic. She received her bachelor's degree in Biological Sciences from North Carolina State in 2005 and her doctorate from Sherman in 2010. And she is a diplomat of chiropractic cervicocranial junction procedures. And she's been level 1 EPIC certified. And she is just an incredible source of information for the students at Sherman College. We're so grateful that she brings her heart to them every day to help them be better chiropractors like she will be bringing to for you when you're at Mile High. Dr. Theo, also I like to call you Dr. C. Why we're so excited for you to join us today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Knowles. I'm so honored to be here and so excited for Mile High that's coming up. It's going to be super.
It's going to be super, and you wrote in the information we talked about beforehand that to teach is to touch a life forever, Jerry Whittle. Why did you get sparked to teach at Sherman?
It wasn't in my plans. In fact, when I graduated from Sherman, I could not wait to get out of here. I was tired of being tested and just wanted to go out there and make my living and prove my worth, right? But a series of circumstances happened that brought me back here unexpectedly. When I left, I had a house, I sold it, and never thought that 3 years later I would be offered a position here. It's an interesting story, really. When I started the Diplomate program, we were studying basic sciences, and I had 2 modules of anatomy, and I was just in Asheville, North Carolina practicing. And I was actually learned really quickly that I didn't like business. So I was kind of had the passion of chiropractic sucked out of me because I first did an associateship for 2 years and I loved being an associate doctor. I got to focus on my patients and helping them. But in my 3rd year, I ran a practice out of that practice. And it was different. And it's funny because I'll tell students, you can't understand it until you experience it. I was in a practice, but did not know what business was until I experienced it. And I experienced that I did not enjoy it. And so I was in that moment in my practice of not enjoying the business running part. And I started the Diplomate and was learning new things. And Sherman was right down the road from me an hour. And I called them up and I told them what I was doing. And I wanted to come down and study in the anatomy lab. Mm-hmm. And they told me no. They said, Christine, you've had your time and this is the students' time. But you can help us teach. And I said, I'm in practice. What do you mean? And it was actually Dr. Bob Irwin. So I say he tricked me into coming back here. And it's one of the greatest blessings. I didn't really know that would fulfill one of my main missions that I had set as a freshman and undergrad. And that's a whole nother story of how I got into chiropractic. But I realized that coming to Sherman College was a way that I could make a bigger impact because I really wanted to know if chiropractic was true, the whole world should know about it. So this is where I realized that in practice, I wasn't going to have as big of an impact. And I taught one day of anatomy and I thought I got myself in over my heels here. But then the second day, a student said, "What's an SCM?" And I was like, "I know this. I can do this." And by day 3, I rolled up my sleeves. I did part-time at first, and I just fell in love with being back on campus where everybody wants to know about chiropractic. I was really famous in practice for verbal vomiting. I went way too far, and I wanted my patients to be as passionate about chiropractic as me, and I realized that's not fair. But here, on this campus, I can verbal vomit on a student, and they actually will ask me for more. And so I fell in love, and they offered me full time, and I realized, yeah, this is where I need to be. This is where I love being, and this is where I felt like I could make the biggest impact. And so here I am, 12 years this summer, being faculty at Sherman College.
12 years. You
Yes,
know,
sir.
that you got to think about the number of lives that you're impacting in that. There's got to be things that happen, you know, a handful of situations probably think of that, like this has just been such a rewarding moment working with students or seeing, you know, eyes open of like, wow, so this is something new.
It's always the light bulb moments, as we say it, like when they look so puzzled and so lost, but then you just take that extra moment with them, and then the light bulb goes off, and you're like, yeah. And then I love helping people, the students, with specific adjusting. Maybe they learn one application in electives, but they can't use it in clinic. But we take what they learn into their clinic practice and apply it in the side posture toggle, and then they get better results. And so I love watching them realize I can do this. I don't need all the bells and the whistles, and it doesn't have to be everything that I learned. I can take information I've learned, apply it in my clinical setting, and get better results. And so I love those moments working with students as well.
I love that you said light bulb moments. That's one of my sayings. I didn't know that anybody else said that. So
this atmosphere, it's a joy.
yes, I always say those. That's what keeps me going. Taking care of people in my office is like when the lights go on of something. Either it could be something that changes their body or something that they get, like some aspect of chiropractic. I'm like that, and they happen just enough to keep you going because there's times where you know things can be challenging in anything you do. But that's so cool. So then let's circle back. How did you find your way in the chiropractic world?
Oh, well, my chiropractic journey started well over 25 years ago now. I was probably a freshman in high school, and my mom went to a chiropractor for low back pain, and that chiropractor told her the chiropractic story. And like any great mother did, she went home and she drug her 3 kids into that chiropractic office. I was drug into the chiropractic office as a freshman. I didn't know why I was there. I remember laying face up on his table and just thinking, this is the cheesiest guy I've ever met in my life. I didn't understand it then. Fast forward a couple years, I got my driver's license and I had my freedom, and I wasn't going anymore. And it was coming up on time to go to college. And I didn't want to go to college either. I wanted to do the gap year and stay with my friends. I didn't want to leave. But, you know, a funny thing about me is my dad was born and raised in Greece, on an island in Greece. And that island didn't have electricity until he was in his 20s. So just a very different upbringing. And so my dad's idea for his firstborn daughter was not to go to college. It was actually, I was supposed to get married, have children, because that's what the first female or females did in that culture.
Right, exactly.
But I had a Yankee Italian mother. And my Yankee Italian mother told my father different, and she shipped me off to college. Thank goodness. I had no choice. I ended up finding myself a freshman at North Carolina State University. And again, I didn't really want to be there. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had to pick something, so I knew what I was going to major in. I thought maybe veterinary school because I liked animals, but obviously I wasn't very studious student at that point, so I didn't think that was going to work out. High competition at NC State. I thought about engineering or architecture because I'd like to doodle and draw, but I wasn't really feeling passionate about it. And here's the funny part of the story is here I am, a freshman in a dorm room I don't want to be in, 4 hours away from home. And I had a book that made it to that dorm room with me, given by that cheesy chiropractor I didn't even like. And it was Terry Romberg's Chiropractic First.
I know that book.
And so I sat.
Give that out to people.
Right. The layman book to understand. And I read that book in one night and it hit me. I was like, what? The nervous system runs and controls everything, and the chiropractor's job is to remove interference so it optimally functions. Why haven't I heard about this before? Like, why? It was a mystery to me why nobody told me about spinal health and how important it was. So I was intrigued, and it made sense. In the last chapter of that book is the AMA versus Wilt case, where the group of chiropractors were suing the American Medical Association and won that case. And so here I am, an 18-year-old girl in a college dorm room, and I was mad. I was like, what? Like, this could be true, and they tried to stomp it out, close the book. And I made a vow to myself. I said, I'm going to go to chiropractic school and I'm going to see if it's true. And if it's true, I'm going to make sure the whole world knows about it. And I did not know what that was going to look like. And that's what I did. So I entered chiropractic school to learn about it and see if I thought it was true. And I had that journey, was quite an experience. And then I didn't realize that 3 years later, that second part of making sure the whole world knows about it was me coming back here and doing what I can to change curriculum and be a leader in this profession and influence students on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, that's so funny. I also got to tell you, you and I have to have some other conversations outside of this and outside chiropractic, because I have an Italian grandma and a Greek grandfather. So
those will make for stories.
Yes, we'll have to chat about that,
That'll be fun.
Yes, it will be. So, wow, I didn't know that. Chiropractic first. I haven't heard that in a while. I used to get cases of that and give it out in our office back in the day. So, there you go. You never know how far-reaching something you say, do, or think today will affect the lives of millions tomorrow. So then with the upper cervical focus, how'd you end up that route? Because people go in different routes and, go Gonstead, full spine, whatever. How did upper cervical become something that was exciting to you?
I think it was my inquisitive nature of trying to find that truth and not settling for just being taught how to do something, but really wondering, how is this working? Is it working? But for a long time, through chiropractic school, nobody knows the grind like someone who's been through chiropractic school. So for a long time, I was just trying to keep my head above water. And it really wasn't until I got into clinic, and I had been a chiropractic patient for 10 years. And for 10 years, I needed the crack every single week. My thoracic spine, I could feel the tension that would build every week. And I just knew I had to go to my chiropractor to get that to release and feel some type of way. And then a week later, it would build back up. And so I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do, getting subluxation free and releasing innate potential. But what I realized when the tables turned and I was the doctor, I was finding the same thing, doing the same thing. And I started to wonder, what am I really fixing here? And that's where I took Dr. Perry Rush's Blair elective. o'clock in the morning.
Perry Rush. I had class with him in his Blair elective too.
Right. And it really opened my eyes. There had been speakers that have been talking about upper cervical and these miracles. I'm like, what are they? George planting the seeds. But I didn't really understand, how can two bones affect the whole body? And so when I took that class, it showed me how unique that area is and how analytical we could be in assessing it. And so I still was very stubborn. I've always been my whole life, had to learn the hard way. So on a student budget, I took the time and paid the money to get under care with him. And my first Blair adjustment, it wasn't like any angels came off the table or experienced significantly different. But one thing changed after 10 years of general chiropractic procedures. This was the first time that a week later, I didn't have that thoracic tension building, because for the first time, my head was actually straight and my body didn't feel a need to compensate for my head being off center. And that was enough for me to experience that difference, to know there was something there. And so I just went really full upper cervical studying from that point on, really. And then even 8 months later, I actually had a huge hormonal change where in my whole life I was irregular, and I even had to take pills to have a menstrual cycle after a year of not having one. So I was very irregular my whole life. But at 2 months after my first Blair adjustment, my hormones regulated, and I was normal ever since, with 3 kids to prove it now. So yeah, that really showed me it's not just about structure, biomechanics that I was feeling in my thoracic, but it's down to the cellular another level, like we talk about in this chiropractic story we tell.
Well, it's really neat when the story becomes reality or something you experience, either in your body or in a practice member's, right?
Right. Absolutely.
That's so cool. And that's why I tell you, I tell, like, I'm so glad to hear that you just said, I'm gonna invest in getting care from Dr. Perry Rush and invest into learning more with, in this case, upper cervical, because I tell students all the time, like, the Sherman basic package is phenomenal compared to any chiropractic school in my book. And at the same time, there's growth that can be had outside that. And when students, invest energy to say, hey, I'm going to go in a greater depth, it could be Gonstead, whatever, then school. I know that, like, you'll invest more than that when you get out if you go and decide to learn, Epic, for example. Like, do what you can while you're in school,
Absolutely. As
So
many tools in our pocket. And I learned that one the hard way.
Right.
I got so hyper focused now on what I thought was the truth and the answer, and hyper focused there. And then I didn't fully develop my tool belt for much else. And so here I am 15 years as a chiropractor, now trying to develop my tool belt to address other areas beyond just the upper cervical region.
And that's why, chiropractors have to keep growing and learning. And there's such a breadth of information in the chiropractic profession. So then Epic, I personally think, all the orthospinalogy, that whole area is, I don't know enough about it. So I can say I'm guilty of what you just said. How did you end up in that specific area?
Right. Well, I practice orthospinalogy. It's funny. When I was a student and I saw the upper cervical, and that's the way I wanted to go. There was one thing I told myself: I didn't want to use an instrument. I wanted to use my hands. But then, as I'm an intern and I'm learning, and I don't have the skill set, I wasn't quite as efficient, and I knew it was human error. I knew it was me, not the principle of chiropractic. When chiropractic is not working, it's not that chiropractic doesn't work. It's what's the application of chiropractic being used. And so I knew that even as an intern, I knew it was my fault. I wasn't getting, my patients were so nice. Like, yeah, my neck pain's better. I'm like, but the post check doesn't look great. So I tried knee chest. I just wasn't working. Toggle, everybody feels like BJ, your hair flies, it feels good. But if the post results aren't there, they're not there. And then Dr. Bart Patzer, actually from orthospinalogy, I went to a conference. He found out I was graduating and he called me up, and there were some positions opened and he wanted to know if I was interested. But in the back of my head, I knew it was application with an instrument, and I thought I didn't want to do that. So I told him no politely, hung up the phone. I said, wait a minute, what is this orthospinalogy and instrument adjusting? And that's where I got a book, Orthospinalogy Procedures. It's great. They have a whole textbook published by Lippincott and Williams where you can teach yourself the technique. And that's exactly actually what I did, because I was so late that there was no seminars coming up. So I taught myself out of this book. But the first chapter is the Grostic story and why orthogonal model came about, from him having Hodgkin's lymphoma and BJ putting him into remission, but another HIO toggle didn't. And so Grostic had this mentality that it wasn't okay that one chiropractor can deliver these results, but another can't. And so it was the idea of putting numbers to a listing and not just looking at one joint or articulation, but looking at the entire cranium all the way down to C7 and what is the pattern. We look at for subluxation patterns. And my goal is to restore everything in proper alignment to their epigenetics. They might not be perfectly orthogonal, but we can actually in Epic measure, well, how much are your condyles twisted compared to your cranium? So I realized this instrument adjusting that came about was just to decrease human error. You have the same force. You can measure a line of drive, right? And so their art in instrument adjusting is really the setup. And then my X-ray analysis is an art in what we do. Because once you get that listing, it's like their fingerprint that unlocks their subluxation.
Right.
So that got me into instrument adjusting, and I did that for 9 years. And it was the Diplomate program, actually, as the second year of it. We're introduced to other technique, upper cervical techniques. And Dr. Stan Pierce just gave us an overview. And what I realized when he was speaking is that you can always be a little more specific. Right. And here I am, a specific upper cervical chiropractor, but he was teaching me a few ways that I could be even more specific. And that's what intrigued me. And I eventually went to his week-long boot camp. And by day 3, my brain was exploded with how much more specificity that there could be. And that's what started to transition me over. But it's really been an amazing journey. And I'll tell you, honestly, I don't even like the word upper cervical because it's just chiropractic.
Right.
Right? And these upper cervical techniques are just really specific in their analysis and application of chiropractic.
Right.
That's what I love so much about them.
Right. Right. You know, I'll you know, it's funny you say many of the things you said, but you know, there's that saying that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? And I said I'm never going to take any instrumentation or X-rays when I was in school, and here I am teaching an IRAP and you know, an X-ray scan analysis protocol I have. So it's funny how that all happens, right? You know, and Logan used to say that he adjusts the atlas, but he does it from the sacrum, right? That was what he said. I adjust the atlas all the time, but I do it from here. Like that's chiropractic. And Donnie Epstein says all the time that, well, really, network is an upper cervical application, that we're just addressing all those different patterns from different access points. You know, so it's interesting to the breadth of information that's in chiropractic for people to learn more is so amazing. You know, I'm really excited that you're going to be able to share more about that at Mile High, because it's something that I want to be more knowledgeable about. You know, craniocervical hemodynamics just sounds, you know, fascinating, things that chiropractors should learn, and you know, so they can go beyond being, you know, or on top of being a chiropractic generalist, just say that, you know, to have greater knowledge.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And that talk that I do really breaks down and makes it digestible for people. And it's a funny story there is learning all these pieces in the Diplomate program. And you have this instructor teaching you this part and this instructor teaching you this part. And it wasn't until studying for the final exam that it all came together for me. And I saw it, like I put it together in a digestible form and was able to turn it into a talk for people to realize. And then what I want to do too at Mile High is, how do you relay that to your patients? Because you don't, vertebral artery, jugular vein, vagus nerve, like I want to give the audience a really simple way or analogy to explain it to your patients. And they really get it. They get it probably better than some of our own peers do a lot of times.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also love that that you also mentioned about, you know, pattern, because I really feel, I mean, I'm sure it's part of different Diplomate programs, but very few, and Sherman may be the only place that really teach that central to your analysis is the system dynamic or stuck. I don't think, and it's a vital chiropractic concept, and I don't think other schools teach that as part of their curriculum, as to my knowledge.
The same here. But how vital to know when and when not to put a force into a spine.
Right, right. Or that the system that's ill or subluxated or sick or, you know, not functioning as the stuck system. You know, people don't learn that versus having what you said you had initially of having, like, you know, just thoracic spine. And there's benefits to all kinds of chiropractic. I'm not saying something negative, but then have that feeling like, well, wait a second, this is repeating over and over again,
exactly.
Right? And is this really being corrected, or do I have to look at it at another level of depth? Right. So which goes back to that quote of chiropractic is specific or it's nothing. Right. Mm-hmm. So then with you, what is exciting about when you get to teach students this now?
When I get to teach students Epic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting because it's a whole nother model. When they're in the Sherman core, everything's articular Palmer model. So it really blows their mind because you're just showing them specificity from how do you customize your image for your unique patient. And that's where it starts. Like, we literally see how do your bones sit, then that's going to dictate how I take this image for you, so I can measure your angles and see what the best vector is for you. And so just starting there with them to say specificity matters. And I always say, I don't care what technique you use. Not one technique is for every patient. Every patient is a unique individual. Chiropractic is amazing. We help so many people. It's when chiropractic doesn't work that I say to students, we can't just hang on to our patients. We have to recognize when our application model is not working for them, and then be able to either refer or have the tools in our own pocket. So no matter what they choose to do, I always say, just whatever you do, do it well and be as specific as possible, and you will help more people. So that's what I love about the EPIC technique, is being able to show them how can we be more specific, all the way from taking the images to analyzing the images to setting the patient up. And I say, even if you're not going to do this, you take this elective and you're going to be able to take so much information into your articular model practice. You're going to see so many enhancements for your patients, because that's what it's all about.
It's going to upgrade your analysis skill set and to serve the person that's looking for help from you.
And I love seeing them do it. Like, they get frustrated. I want to use this. I want to use that. And I want to use. I'm like, take what you know and use it. And then you see them light up. Like, I did that. Yes, you did. And you can do so much more.
And I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that each step, like, for example, going from where you started to Blair, then to Epic, you probably saw some kind of increase in, exciting things change in people's bodies.
Yeah. So I was practicing orthospinology for 9 years, advanced graduate, and then I started, I learned about the EPIC, and I took a little bit of Atlas orthogonal, because I want to know how much of EPIC came from Roy Sweat's Atlas orthogonal, because I'm not the one to just do what people do and tell me. I wanted to know, what was this evolution? And for about 2 years, I shadowed Dr. Rosa. I was mixing all kinds of upper cervical. I was doing ortho, Rosa, AO, and EPIC, like just coming up with my own ideas. And finally, I was like, all right, I've just got to do EPIC and see what it can produce on its own, right? And I had an opportunity. I was seeing a patient, and they were holding about 4 to 6 weeks at a time, and we both wanted to see if they could hold longer. So Dr. Stan Pierce Jr. came down, and he helped me work up my first EPIC patient. I guess that's been 4 or 5 years ago now. And I was just amazed at what I saw, because I had been taking care of that spine for a full year, over a year, and I knew what that spine felt like before and after. And then I'm watching Dr. Stan take the images, analyze the images. I even interrupted him. I said, "You're not going to use that number, are you, Stan?" And he said, "Why not? That's their unique anatomy, and I have to make sure I take that into account." And I was like, okay, but in my past experience, there's limitations of why you wouldn't, or nobody would take, it was actually an axial circle that was so flat. And what it would do is make a very high line of drive. And so for that patient, we worked up a 54-degree line of drive, which is very unique. In fact, it's so unique, in order to hit the transverse process 1 inch deep in that skin, at that angle, we had to enter through the external auditory meatus and deliver that sound wave force to hit that TP. And when I rechecked that patient after the delivery of that specific adjustment, I think my mouth hit the floor, because the extreme difference, like the muscles didn't just loosen, they went jello. And I hadn't seen that in my previous care. I would see change, but I made excuses for why it didn't clear up 100%. Maybe it was the way they walked has been too long. There's limitations of matter, or la-di-da, but it was amazing. And what I found, that patient actually ended up holding that adjustment for 2 full years. And so I was amazed. I'm like, what have you done right here? And so somebody said, chiropractic is specific or it's nothing. And if it is, then when is specific enough? Because if it matters all the time, because that might be what makes the difference. And so in the orthogonal model procedures, we look to clear 5 things. We're looking, is your head tilt over? Is your neck swung over? Is your atlas rotated? Is the C2 rotated? Is your atlas level with the ground? If there's a aberrancy, it might not be. But we look at these things, and if I only reduce maybe 2 of those, well, you still have 3 unstable things that are creating tension in the area. If I can reduce all 5 things, let's say I leave you with a neck swung over or C2 rotated. Well, that's going to create tension and you're not going to hold as long. So in theory, the better I can correct all 5 things, the better you should hold.
Right. So then somewhere along the way you wanted to learn more and you started to learn more about network. And what made you what got you excited to learn there?
I didn't know what I wanted at that time, honestly. And it's funny looking back on it now that I've read and listened to Donnie and read some of the books and realizing, looking back, what was happening. But basically, the end of 2023, beginning of 2024, I was stuck. I was feeling really stuck and bored, which is weird to say because it was around the same time I just see miracles. I really do. Like when people go to the chiropractor, they're having to be seen every week and just to keep headaches at bay. But then they find out about what I do and they come see me, and one adjustment later, they have no more headaches and they've suffered with them for 30 years.
Right.
And the next headache, migraine patient comes in and their headache was so bad, being adjusted every single week to try to keep it at bay. And one adjustment later, it was all gone. And then all of a sudden we realized she had an infection in her jaw she didn't even know about because it was lumped in with the migraines. And then hydrocephalus patient with a shunt since they were a baby, held 4.5 months and started having low pressure symptoms. We shut that shunt off and it's been over a year. That shunt's been off and they're still holding and doing great, right? So I was seeing miracles, right? Miracles, as we say, but I was bored. And so it's hard to explain that at that time, but now looking back, I just knew that there could be more. And that's what Donnie's work has shown me, is that there is more to that person than just getting them out of crisis. And that's what I spend my career doing, is people are at their worst and they get referred to me. And so being so specific can give them a drastic change. But then my work was done. And I didn't know what I wanted to do more. I just, my biology knew there's got to be more. I can do more. And so I didn't know. All I did in 2024 was focus on myself, actually. And I had always seen network around and been curious. And I decided that was the step I was going to take in 2024 to take care of myself, to make the time to take care of me. I was like, gym or network? I probably should have picked both. But, you know, as the study shows, doing the network makes me want to make that choices. So I think I chose right. And I made a commitment. And it was hard for me, like, to start out and take the time to focus on me instead of giving. But I knew if I continued the way I was going, I wasn't going to be able to help anybody for much longer. So that's how that came about. And then just my experience. It was like, my first week, 3 visits, I experienced more change with my forward head posture than I had incurred in 20 years of chiropractic care. And I was mad. I was actually mad. I was like, what is this stuff? And how did it do that? So I couldn't deny what changed in me and what I've seen change in my children that started care shortly after that. And I still just didn't know what's happening or how it's working. My analytical mind trying to figure out everything, but not understanding it. But I just knew what I was experiencing. And so I was really excited to get to sit down finally just a couple weeks ago with you and Rochelle and learn and take my first Network Discover experience. And it was amazing.
You know, I think what you said something so important, like the experience of getting someone out of crisis, which is a valuable gift. Like helping someone be out of crisis with a chiropractic adjustment is an incredible gift. And think, well, yeah, absolutely is. It's huge. I mean, it's life-changing. And to realize, is there a different next step of their health or well-being to a different grade of wellness for them, or is another thought. So what was something exciting in learning just a little bit about network that you've learned that was like just it made you more enthusiastic?
Well, still a lot to learn, but what I've got so far, if somebody would have told me a year ago that this is multiple analysis systems in one, I would have been there a lot sooner, because I'm all about analysis, right? Like, oh, you're telling me I'm going to do some Logan work, some Thompson, some SOT, some upper cert. All these things are wrapped up into network. I think you saw my face when Rochelle said, yeah, that's why it's called network. I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. Nobody told me this. Because I'm the very analytical mind. I would have been right there and be like, show me the different things. Show me all the analyses. And I just loved, like, even Tom talks about, like, there's a pattern and we teach it here.
Right.
It is just one pattern, right? And so being able to identify the different patterns that system can show, I'm excited to learn more about that.
I still find it absolutely fascinating. I think very similarly to how you think as I'm listening to what you say. And I still, 30 years as a chiropractor, I find it absolutely fascinating. I love learning more and seeing the things that happen to people each and every day. And that's one of the things for all of us as chiropractors that, keeps our spark is sometimes you just look, at your hands or whatever instrument you're using, you're like, how did that just happen to this person? And what a gift we all have to be, as a chiropractor, whatever way we do to make a difference in someone's life that way. So, truly, and that's part of just doing the best you can. And seeing those light bulb moments being pretty exciting. So, again, I'm really grateful that you get that students get to learn from you at Sherman. I'm really grateful that people get to learn from you on this podcast and also at Mile High in September. If there's one bit of advice you could give chiropractic, doctors of chiropractic, or students of chiropractic, what would be one last thing you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, I think just what we do well as chiropractors, and that's just serving with your heart, getting out of your head. And that's what I've come to learn in this past year is it's not about any technique. It's not about any one thing. As we talked about, there's so many beneficial ways we can help people here in this chiropractic profession. So just coming from that heart is going to be what you need to serve the person in front of you. And we can't lose track of that. I did it myself, like so many mechanical, just what's the next step? What's this? What's that? And we have to be careful of that and remember to always lead with our heart. That's the lesson I've learned this past year that I'm so thankful for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful for your contributions because I know you're lighting a lot of light bulbs, or at least getting to a higher wattage.
Light fires over here. We're excited. And that's what lighting the students on fire for this tick, right? A lot of them come in here thinking, just like I did, I thought I knew what this chiropractic thing was, but then we get engrossed in it and we're like, oh, wait. And it can be overwhelming with the curriculum they have. So being their coach on the sidelines and their mentor to remind them why they started this in the first place. And that's why I love this job. We come in here wanting to help people, and I get to work with those people that want to help people. So it's really my honor and privilege.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It's we're all very fortunate to be able to have the calling of a chiropractor, of the life of a chiropractor. It's a pretty amazing, life to choose. So I want to tell you, people, you're going to absolutely get so much out of seeing Dr. C or Dr. Theo at Mile High. And, anytime you get some time to learn from her or talk to her, do it. You will be all the much better for it. So thank you for taking your time to be with us today. And everyone, remember I said, hit subscribe. You never want to miss any Mile High tick. And most certainly, plan to be on higher ground in September. I'll tell you, September, tell people, like, if you're coming out to Mile High, spend the extra time because it is one of the most beautiful times to be in Colorado. That last week in September, it's when the leaves change and people all flock to the mountains to do that. So I'm like, spend an extra half day or day and go up into the mountains to see it. It's like the time to be there. So, and again, thank you so much for transforming lives. Dr. Theo, we appreciate you.
thank you. I appreciate you all.
Keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.